Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging headfirst into the epic story of Achilles, probably the most famous Greek warrior, wouldn't you say?
Oh, definitely. Top of the list for most people.
You sent over a really fascinating pile of material, Homer's Iliad, obviously,
Yeah.
but also later Greek stuff, Roman accounts, even archaeology, and linguistic analysis.
Yeah, it's quite the mix.
So our mission today is, well, to try and cut through all those layers, the myth, the later interpretations, and get a clearer picture of who Achilles really was,
Yeah.
what made him this legend, and why are we still talking about him thousands of years later?
It's a great goal because, each source adds something different. Homer gives us the foundation, but then later writers, they add bits, sometimes contradictory bits, and the archaeology. Well, that gives us glimpses of maybe the real-world context. It's a rich puzzle.
Okay, let's unpack this from the beginning then. His origin story is pretty spectacular right off the bat.
Absolutely.
We're talking Thetis, a Nereid, a sea nymph that's some serious divine connection, and Peleus, who was a king and a famous Argonaut himself.
Yeah.
Jason's crew.
Right, Peleus. And that mix, the divine and the mortal, it's fundamental to Achilles. It sets him up immediately as someone extraordinary.
Different from just a regular hero.
Exactly. Destined for greatness, maybe, but also for, struggle.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Zeus and Poseidon both wanted to marry Thetis initially.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they backed off because of a prophecy. It said her son would be greater than his father. So that tells you something about the power, the potential Achilles was born with.
Wow. Okay. And then his upbringing. Amphitheia, with his companion Patroclus, super important later, and tutored by Chiron.
Chiron, yeah.
Now, Chiron wasn't just like any old centaur, was he? He had this reputation for being wise, righteous, knew about healing arts.
That's right. The most righteous centaur, they said. His influence probably gave Achilles more than just fighting skills, maybe a sense of honor, duty. And the medicine thing is interesting too, isn't it?
Yeah, especially with that Telephus story later. Suggests maybe a broader education than just, swords and spears.
That should be. But you're right, that bond with Patroclus, formed early on, that becomes absolutely central in the Iliad. It drives so much of what Achilles does.
Right. And sort of hanging over all this is that prophecy from Thetis, his choice. Long, quiet life, or a short one packed with glory.
Yeah, the classic choice.
And, well, no spoilers needed. We know which path he took. That decision basically fuels the whole Trojan War saga for him.
It does. It speaks volumes about his ambition, his desire for Kleos.
Kleos. That's the enduring glory, right?
Yeah.
The kind that gets you remembered in songs.
Exactly. It's fundamental to that whole ancient Greek hero thing.
Now let's talk about the name Achilles. The etymology you shared is fascinating. You linked it to achos, meaning grief or distress.
Achos, and laos, which could mean people or nation, or maybe even soldiers.
So it could mean something like he who brings distress to the people, or even he whose people grieve. That's quite something, especially for someone chasing glory.
It really is, and the Iliad plays this out constantly, doesn't it? When Achilles fights, the Trojans suffer grief. When he pulls out in anger,
his own side, the Achaeans, suffer.
Yeah, it perfectly captures the immense impact he has, for good or ill. And that other reading, Laos as soldiers, it adds another layer, right? His men inflict distress on the enemy, but when he's wronged, they suffer too. Really shows the weight of his actions.
Absolutely. And he had other names too. Pyrrhus, Aeacide, Pallades, Podarches.
Yeah, quite a few. Pyrrhus means saved from the fire, which hints at that other immortality story, Thetis trying to burn away his mortal parts.
Right, not the Styx one.
No. Aeacides and Pallades are patronymics, son of Aeacus' line, son of Peleus, standard stuff. And Podarches means swift-footed.
The famous swift-footed Achilles.
That's the one. Each name just highlights a different aspect, his lineage, his speed, maybe even those early myths. Paints a fuller picture.
And speaking of those immortality attempts, the dipping in the river Styx, that's the one everyone knows, the vulnerable heel.
The iconic image, yeah. But it's really important to remember that's not in Homer.
Oh.
No. In the Iliad, Achilles actually gets wounded. Asclepius grazes his elbow with a spear.
So not totally invulnerable in the original.
Nope. That whole Styx story, the heel that comes later, really takes off with the Roman poet Statius. It's a powerful image, gave us the phrase Achilles' heel, but it's a later addition.
Interesting. So there was the fire version, the Styx version. Shows how myths evolve, I guess.
Exactly. A really compelling narrative, even if it came later, can just stick and become the defining story. Shows the power of retelling.
Right. Okay, so moving past his origins, there's this weird detour where he gets hidden away. Post-Homeric stories say Thetis, or maybe Peleus,
Yep.
disguise him as a girl on the island of Skyros.
Yeah, to keep him away from Troy. It's a funny image, isn't it? This great warrior hiding among princesses.
Did he have, like, a girl's name?
Possibly Pyrrha, meaning the red-haired girl. And while he was there, he supposedly had a relationship with Princess Deidamia, and they had a son, Neoptolemus, who also features later, and maybe another son, Aneros.
So, a whole secret life, almost. Trying to dodge fate, I suppose.
Seems like it. But fate, or maybe just Odysseus' cleverness, catches up with him.
Ah, Odysseus. How did he figure it out? I love these stories.
Well, the most famous version is the peddler trick. Odysseus shows up disguised as a merchant, lays out trinkets and women's clothes, but hides some weapons among them.
And Achilles goes straight for the weapons.
Instinctively grabs a spear or a shield, yeah.
Wow.
True nature revealed. There's another version where Odysseus just sounds a battle alarm, and Achilles is the only girl who reacts by grabbing a weapon.
Huh, brilliant. His warrior instincts were just too strong, couldn't stay hidden.
Exactly. The disguise couldn't hold.
So, cover blown, he joins the war. And he's not just some lone wolf. He leads the Myrmidons. 50 ships, 50 men each. That's a serious force.
A very significant contingent. Highly skilled warriors. And even before the main action of the Iliad, he's already making a name for himself.
Like the Telephus incident. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah, King Telephus of Mysia. The Greeks land there by mistake. There's a fight. Achilles wounds Telephus with his spear. But then there's a prophecy.
Let me guess. Only Achilles can heal him.
He that wounded shall heal, yeah. So Telephus has to track down Achilles and the cure. Rust scraped from the very spear that wounded him.
Wow, okay. Bit of battlefield homeopathy there.
Yeah.
And Telephus then guides them to Troy.
In exchange for being healed, yes, it shows Achilles being, well, pragmatic maybe, not just a brute warrior. The healing serves a purpose for the Greeks. Kind of foreshadows the complex motives we see later.
And he was sacking cities, too. Lyrnessus. That's where he captured Briseis, right?
That's the one. Briseis, who becomes absolutely pivotal in the Iliad. He also sacked Pedasus, killed King Tinens. He was building quite a reputation before Homer's story even kicks off.
Establishes him as this top warrior. Explains why Agamemnon values him, and maybe why losing Briseis hit so hard later.
Precisely. It sets the stage. He's used to victory, used to the spoils, the honor.
Then there's the story of Troilus, Apollo's son. The sources seem a bit mixed on this one.
They are. The older accounts talk about an ambush. Achilles kills Troilus in the sanctuary of Apollo Thymbraios. There were prophecies, apparently, that Troy couldn't fall if Troilus reached a certain age. So, a strategic, though sacrilegious, killing.
Sacrilegious because it was in a temple?
In Apollo's temple, killing Apollo's son.
Yeah.
But then, much later, medieval raiders add this whole romantic angle.
Like Achilles falling for him.
Yeah, some versions have Achilles struck by Troilus's beauty, or even overcome with lust, which leads to the boy's death. That's definitely a later invention, though, reflecting different times, different storytelling styles. We have to be careful not to mix them up.
Right, and some versions connect Achilles' own death to this, like payback from Apollo.
Some later traditions suggest that, yes, retribution for the sacrilege adds another layer to his eventual fate.
Okay, so this all leads us right into the Iliad. And the central theme is, well, it's right there in the first line, isn't it? He's rage.
Exactly. Monas Achilles. The wrath of Achilles. The whole epic revolves around his anger after Agamemnon dishonors him by taking Briseis.
It's amazing how the entire poem focuses on just a few weeks of the war, all driven by this one guy's fury. His sense of honor is completely shattered.
Deeply wounded, and his withdrawal from the fight, it has absolutely devastating consequences for the Greeks. Shows the power of one individual's emotion, even in myth, to just change everything.
He doesn't just sit out. He actively asks his mom, Thetis, to get Zeus to help the Trojans, just to spite Agamemnon and make the Greeks feel his absence.
It's incredible the length he goes to. His pride is that immense. Eventually, Agamemnon realizes he messed up, sends an embassy of Odysseus, Ajax, Phoenix offering huge gifts, Briseis back.
But Achilles says no.
Flat out refuses. He's just consumed by the rage, the sense of injustice, tells them all to just sail home. It's an amazing scene, shows how deep the wound is.
Incredible stubbornness. Honor above everything, even victory for his own side. And meanwhile, the Trojans, led by Hector, are seriously pushing the Greeks back.
Things get desperate, which leads to Patroclus.
Ah, Patroclus. He can't stand seeing the Greeks getting hammered, so he persuades Achilles to let him wear his armor and lead the Myrmidons.
A fateful decision. Patroclus fights bravely, pushes the Trojans back, but he goes too far, disobeys Achilles' warning not to pursue them to the city walls.
And he's killed by Hector.
Killed by Hector with Apollo's help. That news reaching Achilles, it changes everything. The rage shifts.
From wounded pride to pure grief and vengeance.
Exactly. The grief is overwhelming. Thetis comes again, commissions new armor from the god Hephaestus himself. Incredible armor.
Including the famous shield of Achilles, right?
Yeah.
Homer spends ages describing it.
He does. It's an amazing piece of poetry. The shield depicts, like, the entire world, cities at peace, cities at war, farming, dancing, the cosmos. It's incredibly symbolic. Maybe represents the world Achilles is now re-entering, but purely for revenge.
And his return to battle is just terrifying.
Like a force of nature unleashed. He cuts through the Trojan ranks, his grief fueling this unstoppable fury. He even fights the river god, Scamander.
River god.
Yeah, Scamander gets angry because Achilles is choking his waters with corpses. Achilles fights the river itself. It gets so extreme, Zeus has to step in to stop him sacking Troy right then and there, ahead of schedule, basically.
Wow. Shows his almost godlike power when he's enraged.
Yeah.
And then the showdown with Hector.
The climax. Achilles chases Hector around the walls of Troy. Athena tricks Hector into stopping and fighting.
It's brutal. Hector knows he's doomed, but fights bravely.
Yeah.
And Achilles, he's just merciless.
Utterly. He refuses Hector's dying plea to return his body for burial. That's a huge dishonor in their culture.
And then dragging the body behind his chariot. It's shocking. Even reading it now shows the absolute depth of his rage and grief.
It's raw, brutal, or stripped bare. Even the funeral games for Patroclus, while honoring his friend, are soaked in this need for vengeance.
But then there's that incredible scene near the end. Priam, Hector's father, the old king,
Sneaks into the Greek camp, into Achilles' tent.
to beg for his son's body back. Just imagine the courage that took.
It's one of the most moving scenes in all of literature, I think. Priam humbling himself, appealing to Achilles' memory of his own father.
And Achilles, he actually relents. He sees his own father in Priam, maybe. Sees the shared humanity, the shared grief.
It's a moment of profound empathy breaking through the rage. He gives Hector's body back, agrees to a truce for the funeral.
The Iliad ends there, with Hector's funeral.
Yeah.
But it leaves you knowing more is coming, right? Troy's fall, Achilles' own death.
Exactly. It closes on a somber note, foreshadowing doom.
So what happens after the Iliad? The story continues in other sources. We hear about the Amazon queen Penthesilea.
Right. She arrives to help the Trojans. A fierce warrior. Achilles fights her, kills her. But then, seeing her beauty as he removes her helmet, he feels remorse, grief even.
Another complex emotional reaction from them.
It adds another layer, doesn't it? Then there's Memnon, the Ethiopian king, another powerful ally for Troy. He kills Nestor's son, Antilochus, who is close to Achilles.
So Achilles seeks revenge again.
Yes, he kills Memnon in vengeance for Antilochus. It echoes the Patroclus-Hector dynamic. Loyalty, grief, revenge, these themes keep playing out.
And then? Achilles' own death? How does it finally happen? Hector predicted it in the Iliad, didn't he? Paris and Apollo.
He did. That's the Homeric foreshadowing. Later traditions get more specific. Statius, again, is key for the version everyone knows. Paris, shooting an arrow, guided by Apollo, hitting his only vulnerable spot.
The heel. At the Scan Gates of Troy.
That's the famous version. Its symbolism is just so powerful, the single weak point. But again, crucial to remember, it's a later development, not in Homer's original layer.
Are there other versions of his death?
There are. One involves the Trojan princess Polyxena. Achilles falls in love with her, arranges a secret meeting, maybe even to marry her, hoping it might end the war.
But it's a trap.
An ambush. Paris shoots him, possibly in the temple of Apollo, again connecting back to that Troilus sacrilege, maybe. So a death brought about by love or desire, not just battle. Quite different.
And even death isn't quite the end for him in some myths. This island, Luke?
The White Island, yeah. At the mouth of the Danube, some traditions say he lived on there after death, like a hero's paradise. Sometimes he's said to be married to Helen or even Medea in the Elysian fields.
Wow, so his legend was just too big to let him stay dead.
Seems like it. It speaks to how deeply he was revered. This idea of a blessed afterlife for him, often connected to these sort of mystical northern edges of the Greek world. Alcaeus called him Lord of Scythia. It elevates him even further.
Now, what about that amazing armor Hephaestus made? What happened to it after Achilles died?
That caused more trouble. A contest was held to decide who deserved it. The main contenders were Odysseus and Ajax the Greater.
Odysseus, the clever speaker, versus Ajax, the great warrior after Achilles.
Exactly. They both gave speeches arguing their case. The decision, supposedly made by captured Trojan prisoners who were asked who had harmed them more, went in favor of Odysseus.
And Ajax didn't take it well.
Not at all. He was driven mad with rage and humiliation. In his madness, he slaughtered a flock of sheep, thinking they were the Greek leaders who'd wronged him. When he realized what he'd done...
He killed himself.
Tragic.
A terrible end for a great hero. It highlights the intense value placed on honor and recognition and the destructive power of rivalry.
Did Odysseus keep the armor?
No, eventually he gave it to Achilles' son, Neoptolemus, when he came to join the war, sort of passing the torch, keeping it in the family line.
And the spear, the Pelian spear, supposedly only wieldable by Achilles.
Right. His father, Peleus' spear, made from ash wood from Mount Pelion, given to him by Chiron maybe, that became legendary too. There was even a relic, supposedly the spear itself, kept in a temple in Phaselis for centuries. Amazing. These physical objects, or claimed objects, they really ground the myth, don't they?
They absolutely do. Make it feel more real, more tangible, like Alexander the Great making a point to visit Achilles' tomb in the Troad, consciously emulating him. It shows how these stories inspired actual historical figures.
Which brings us neatly to his worship, the hero cult. His tomb in the Troad was a major site, wasn't it? Visited by Greeks, Persians, Alexander, Roman emperors.
A huge deal. Across centuries, different cultures recognized its significance. It shows his appeal went way beyond just the Greeks, and there were cults to him all over the place. Sparta, Elis, Thessaly, even southern Italy, Magna Graecia.
So he wasn't just a literary figure, he was actively worshipped.
Oh, yes. As a hero, sometimes almost blurring the lines with divinity in certain places. That Polyxena sarcophagus you mentioned, showing her sacrifice at his tomb, that's direct visual evidence of these cult practices.
But the worship seems especially strong in the Black Sea region, the Greek colonies there.
Incredibly strong, yes. Particularly around Olbia, near modern Ukraine. We had inscriptions calling him Achilles Pontarches, Lord of the Pontuses, the Black Sea. He was seen as a major protector of the city, worshipped right alongside Olympian gods.
Wow, Lord of the Sea. Why do you think he was so big there?
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe his speed and power resonated with seafarers in that region. Maybe legends connected him to the area early on. Pliny the Elder mentions an island of Achilles and a race course of Achilles there, possibly Snake Island and the Tendra Spit.
Snake Island. That's Luke, the White Island where he supposedly lived after death.
That's the common identification, yes. Also called Macaron, the Island of the Blessed. It was a major center for his cult. There are accounts of a temple there dedicated to him.
A temple on a remote island.
Apparently so. Later destroyed to build a lighthouse, but inscriptions confirm its existence. The island had a reputation for healing, and there was an oracle of Achilles there too. It suggests a really active, important cult center, far from mainland Greece, but deeply connected to him.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And you mentioned him being called Lord of Scythia, linking him to the north, and towns named Achillean popping up. Plus, kings in Epirus claiming descent, Alexander's emulation. His legacy seems woven into the ancient world.
It really is. It's a powerful testament to his story that for centuries after the Iliad, long after the Bronze Age setting of the war, he remained this incredibly potent figure culturally and religiously. His story just resonated.
So let's try and wrap this up, summing up this deep dive. Achilles is just this incredibly complex character, isn't he? Part god, part human, the ultimate warrior, but driven by glory and these really intense, very human feelings, grief, rage.
Absolutely. And his story hits on these huge themes. Honor, what it means to be mortal, friendship, love, the devastating consequences of anger, timeless stuff.
We've touched on so many fascinating details, too. The different stories about his invulnerability, Odysseus' cleverness finding him on Skyros, the sheer brutality of his revenge on Hector.
And that whole tradition of worship, especially how widespread it was, particularly that Black Sea connection. And the fact that there isn't just one story of his death. It shows how myths live and breathe and change over time.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on. Thinking about everything, his skill, his famous flaw, those intense bonds with Patroclus or Priam, the tragedy of choosing glory over life. What single thing do you think cemented his legendary status? Was it the fighting, the flaw, the feelings, or maybe, as we just discussed, the way people kept his memory alive through worship? Perhaps looking more closely at that cult following gives us the best clue to why Achilles endures.
That's a great question to leave people with. What made him stick? There's no single easy answer, I suspect.
Indeed. Well, thanks for joining us in this deep dive into the world of Achilles.